So I want to talk about parenting, particularly parenting in Hawaii, and the biggest parenting trap I'm starting to see locally. Comparison. From the private schools that we fight to get our kids into, to the cars that we drive, to the extracurriculars, I think it all comes down to comparison. And I'm not speaking as an expert here. I'm a relatively new dad of two young boys. However, I've watched a lot of local parents and I've also listened to their struggles in parenting, and I've started to see the comparison game already being set up. And while this game transcends cultures and race, and maybe this is something that we see all over the world, I want to talk about it specifically and how it plays out in Hawaii. And also, this video is for myself to learn from. As author Richard Bach said, we teach best what we most need to learn. In my videos about Hawaii, I usually offer my advice as a local, which provides some credibility since I grew up here and currently live here. In parenting, however, I'm still learning. So please share any relevant parenting advice or things you've noticed about parenting in Hawaii in the comments below. Hello from Hawaii. So at first I thought the biggest trap was more financial related, since life in Hawaii is so expensive. As parents, we think that we have to earn a lot of money to provide our kids with the most stuff and opportunities. And locally, this often takes the form of $20,000 a year private school tuition, spring break vacations to the mainland, and all of the latest gadgets and technology. So that's what I initially thought the trap was. If I could just earn more money, I'd be a good parent. However, I realized that at its core, the biggest parent trap is really comparison. And it sucks the joy out of parenting so quickly. Because this comparison thing seems to begin pretty early. You know, we see some kids at the playground and we begin to compare our child's development with theirs. I remember when we first started taking our son to the playground near where we live, he was a little bit younger than most of the other kids. And so he couldn't really go down the slide, and he couldn't really do much, in fact. He'd just kind of climb up the stairs of the jungle gym, and then he'd sit there and do nothing. And meanwhile, we're seeing a lot of these other kids running around, going down the slide, climbing things. In comparison, these kids look like they're Olympians to my son, who's pretty stationary. And when you see that, you start to wonder, okay, what's going on? And admittedly, it took me a while to remind myself that kids develop at different paces. And now a year later, I look at the things that my son can do at that same playground, and he's doing great. He's running up and down, going down the slides, just enjoying the thing like I remember seeing some of those kids do a year before. Now, that's not to say that we should parent in silos all the time. I mean, we live in Hawaii, it's a small place. There are benefits in comparing notes and checking in on what other people are doing. I remember as we were preparing to buy our car seat and stroller for our first son, we'd be checking out what other people might have at Ala Moana or maybe down the street. I think, that looks pretty nice. Oh, what features does that one have? How much is that one on Amazon? Try check. Ultimately, I'm glad we picked the car seat we did because it fit our needs perfectly. We looked at what other people bought, but then we decided for ourselves what we needed. Well, then this comparison game leaves the playground as the kids get older, and it moves to preschools. At the age where my son is right now, which is 2, there's already discussion among our parenting peers on, hey, where you can send your kid? And with the cost of childcare in Hawaii being so high, that's a tough call. Of course, as a parent, you want to provide the best, but when you factor in the finances, the reality is that we all can't afford the best. Then after preschool, the comparison game seems to move to private school versus public school and all of the extracurricular activities. From there, it expands to include summer school enrollment and sports and grade point averages, and then college applications and acceptances. When I think about it like this, it doesn't seem like parenting anymore. It seems almost as if these children are being used as projections of the parents, almost like to prove to other people that one is a good parent. You have to do all this stuff to build your parent resume. So how is this playing out in our lives right now? We're looking to buy a new car, and I'm in the process of deciding what's best for our family. Because I think back to when we had our first son and we needed to upgrade our car. I drive an 18-year-old sedan that I purchased in college. Works great, looks good, just getting kind of old. But it seemed like back then people were saying, if you have a kid, you gotta buy an SUV. I don't know what it is, but you just gotta do it here, right? Honda CR-V, Toyota Highlander or 4Runner, and of course, the popular Lexus RX. And if you look at the roads in Hawaii, it reinforces that because besides trucks, those SUVs seem to be everywhere. According to the Hawaii Auto Dealers Association, of the top 10 vehicles sold in Hawaii in 2022, 5 are SUVs. But now I'm stepping back and asking myself, wait a minute, why do we need an SUV? What's its function, and will it help us as a family? Because my understanding of an SUV is that its benefits include more trunk space if you need it, off-roading, and a bigger car for safety. But when I look at my life as it is, or more importantly, how it will be, I don't think we're gonna need those features. I mean, yes, more trunk space would be nice, but it's not like we're going to haul a lot of stuff all the time. I mean, the trunk just has to fit our strollers, which both will fold compact. And I'm thinking, besides, other than taking people to the airport or moving across the country, which we can't do here, I don't think there's ever been a time I thought to myself, you know, I really need more trunk space. Off-roading is definitely something I don't see us ever doing, and having a higher car would provide a better vantage point for driving, which could lead to more safety. But then I'm thinking, it's gonna be harder to load the kids in the car because of the height difference. And so in stepping back and not just assuming that, oh, I guess we gotta buy an SUV because everyone seems to have an SUV at this point, I think we can make the right decision for our family, picking the perfect vehicle for us. And I think it's probably gonna be a 4-door sedan. And you know what? If I'm wrong and we end up needing the extra trunk space or all the things that SUVs provide, well, then I guess I'm gonna have to take responsibility for underestimating what we needed. But I'd rather just save the money and buy just enough vehicle for what we actually need, rather than overextend our finances for a vehicle that's just nice to have. And one last thing about comparison in Hawaii. I think it's dangerous to actually compare finances with other families in Hawaii because you just don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I know we say we don't compare, but we do, and we do compare finances. And I only point this out because I think it's important to acknowledge that not everyone has access to the same resources. You know, I think about the military families who often have housing paid for with generous housing stipends. They also have access to NEX so they can get cheaper commodities. But I also want to highlight something that I don't think gets enough attention in Hawaii when we talk about our families: the contributions that generational wealth makes. Because first, there's multi-generational housing. Hawaii has the highest percentage of multi-generational households in the country, which provides huge savings for families, so that if a family is living with grandma and grandpa, that's over $2,000 in housing savings per month, including childcare. And that's huge. Like, I was imagining if we didn't have to pay our mortgage, how different would our life be? We could probably eat out more, maybe take more trips, maybe buy the latest and greatest gadgets, go shopping for clothes at Ross every week. Then there's more direct financial assistance that families provide, such as personal loans and especially private school tuition assistance. Because I know that there are kids who are only able to attend private schools because of the generosity of their grandparents. And if it wasn't for them, the kids would have to then attend public school, which is still good, but for some people it's not acceptable. The point is that you just never know how much help other people are getting from their families. And so trying to keep up with families is this losing endeavor because you're never going to out-earn that financial support behind them. So all of this to say, comparison in parenting is a futile venture that will just leave you busying yourself and never being satisfied in the end. At least that's what I'm seeing. And even then, let's say you do all the right things. You give your child the best of the best for 18 years in Hawaii, and then what? Well, that's it. Your job as a parent is done. They have to go off and live their own life, and hopefully they can take care of themselves. Ultimately, I think this comparison game is rooted in fear and insecurity, which we all have. The fear that my child isn't going to get the same opportunities as the other kid, or is somehow gonna miss out on all these things. But the reality is that not everyone gets the same opportunities. That's just life, and that's okay. I think the more important question is, are we making the most of the opportunities that we're given? Again, I think it's great to talk with other parents about parenting, but I'm trying to take what I get from those conversations and still think critically and strategically, and how are these things gonna apply to our family? But as parents, I think we have to take the responsibility to live with the choices that we make. And sometimes those choices may be mistakes, and sometimes they may be successes, quiet successes. And in doing that, there's really no room for comparison. So thanks for watching, and aloha.